You're listening to the Modern Healthcare Back Office, a podcast dedicated to solving the billing issues and gridlock facing the healthcare industry, presented by Prochant. Hosted by Chuck Ellis and Rachel
Hey there,
School.
folks. Chuck here, and welcome to another episode of the Modern Healthcare Back Office. Rachel is on vacation this week, but I am delighted because we got a double feature guest this week. I'm joined by BJ Martinelli, who's head of our HME sales. BJ, how are you doing today?
Great. Thanks for having me, Chuck.
And, of course, our esteemed fearless leader himself, Joey Graham, our Chief Revenue Officer. Joey.
I'm doing excellent. Thanks, Chuck.
I'm glad you're both here, and we were talking a little bit before the show about all the fun physical side effects of a long and arduous trade show, but I'm glad that you're both here and you're both catching up on your sleep. But I wanted to sit down with you really quick today and talk to you about Medtrade, which was just over in Dallas this year, and it sounds like it was a heck of an event. So BJ, I want to start with you and just kind of tell me what your big takeaway was from the trip. Like, what was some of the things that really stood out to you this year at Medtrade?
Yeah, a couple things. First, it's the idea or the execution. They went to one show. I thought it was great for vendors. It was great for attendees. It was just a little bit more juice, a little bit more excitement, I thought, on the show floor, during events. It just, I like the idea of bringing everyone together from all over the country in one central spot. I think that having the two shows, it diluted the group a little bit. So I think it was a great decision. They went to one, and look forward to next March back in Dallas. The other thing, it was great to see a lot of clients there and prospective clients come by. And the biggest thing that I heard too is what we've been seeing over the past 18 months is that people are really struggling with staffing, right? And not only finding people, but retaining was the biggest thing. People are leaving these providers, leaving positions for similar pay or just a little bit more, or just going down to work maybe like a retail job or something down the road for the same amount of money, like I said. But they said less stress, don't need as much knowledge, not as much education. And just keeping those people for the providers has really been tough over the past 18 months. We've done a great job of helping supplement staffing with a bunch of our clients, and it's great to hear how it's been a success.
Yeah, that's been kind of a common thing that we've noticed at several of these shows that we've been to. You know, the great resignation, as everybody has called it, and the great kind of refactoring of everybody's professional careers that COVID caused, and that's been kind of an ongoing point of pressure for a lot of the folks that we work with. And Joey, you actually you spoke several times during the event, so I wanted to talk to you about some of the topics that you heard people talking about.
Sure. So, I want to piggyback a little bit on what BJ just said as well. It was a great show. We actually had two conferences the same week. Prochant is focused on the home-based care market, and as such, we work very closely with the home infusion pharmacy market as well as the HME market, and both had their major trade show last week. So I actually went to both. I started the week at NHIA in Washington, D.C.,
Wow.
And then about halfway through, I flew down to Dallas to Medtrade because, as you mentioned, I had two speaking sessions at Medtrade. So it was a very busy week, right? It was a very long week for us. BJ mentioned the Great Resignation, or you just mentioned the Great Resignation.
Mm-hmm.
I would say I don't know if that's next year, but I think right now it's all about inflation, right? Like right now, I think we're all quite aware that the Federal Reserve keeps raising rates. Inflation is a real thing. The country is potentially in a recession right now, if you listen to many people, or very rapidly sliding towards one. So everybody's looking for, how do I cut costs? And so whereas before it was, and certainly that's still a pain point of having people, finding people, retaining people, but now it's moved on to affording people, right? Because that's not only are we struggling to retain people, the cost of labor has gone up substantially in the US. And everybody's looking for more money because inflation is 6+%, right? Year over year. We keep seeing significant increases, and that's on that basic basket of goods. I think most of us see the real cost of like going to a restaurant, major services. Those costs are up substantially. It's far more than 6%. So where's the relief valve? And candidly, I think the industry has come to the realization there's only a couple relief valves out there that are still left. right? One of them is labor cost. Labor cost is typically the number 2 cost at most providers. It's not number 1. So finding a way to reduce labor costs is extremely important. And we have a lot of folks, especially large enterprises, traditionally never outsource, looking in the market to outsource. And there's been some major news stories in the last few weeks. If you go back and read through HME News and some others, where you will see there are major large scale providers who always had everything in house who are now outsourcing because of that relief valve. There's nowhere else to turn. All my vendor costs are up. All the costs that it takes for me, my labor costs are up. My reimbursement is fixed. And so I have to find that relief valve. So I think that's really one of the major drivers right now is where do I get some labor savings while without jeopardizing my business and without jeopardizing collections. So the other major relief valve is one of the things I talked about, and that's technology. Everybody is now more and more interested in technology than ever before. And I did a session with Bruce Gehring from Allegiance Group on automation and leveraging automation to improve the patient's experience. And in that session, candidly, it wasn't that well attended. I feel like that's because it was at the end of the day on Tuesday, which was sort of the pre-show day. Most people were coming in Tuesday or late Tuesday because Wednesday is when the expo opened and when the show really kind of started. In fact, the welcome reception was on Wednesday. So I'm afraid that because of that, we just didn't have the attendance I would have liked. As context, I did the exact same session at NHIA. I had about 100 people attend.
Wow.
Come to Medtrade, there were about 30. Whereas if you look at the attendance, and this is interesting as well, NHIA had about 1,500 attendees. Medtrade had about 2,200 attendees. In fact, they were really proud. I spoke to the show organizer. They were really proud that they were at pre-COVID numbers. So in other words, that 2,200 attendees is about what they had in Medtrade fall of 2019. I think it's a win, but still, I think many of us were expecting bigger numbers, candidly, just because it's one show now. There is no Medtrade fall. There is no Medtrade West. It's all this one Medtrade. We got to pre-COVID numbers, but there's only the one show. So anyways, it was well attended. Session wasn't as attended as I like. However, we had some really great content. Talked about ChatGPT to start out and how it's really just blown our minds here, what it does.
Sure.
I don't even know if you saw there's an open letter now that's been signed by Elon Musk, Steve Wozniak, some of the technology saying the AI companies need to hit pause because these AIs are growing human-like intelligence, which is so scary, right? I think we've all seen AI, we've all seen some of the movies, but it's fascinating that we're rapidly coming to that point. So we started out with that because obviously in HME, we don't have ChatGPT like AIs roaming around yet. However, the big points I made to the attendants was they always say that I don't know who they are, but I've heard this my entire career. Healthcare runs about 10 years behind other industries, and HME runs about 10 years behind healthcare. And so we're about 20 years behind. So in other words, in HME, you look at what was the greatest technology of 20 years ago, and that's some of the best stuff you can get today. And I say that sort of jokingly, but I'm also not joking. It's 100% real. And a great example of that is the proliferance of RPA, or robotic process automation, in HME. Finally, it's getting a foothold. It's becoming useful. You're seeing more and more adoption of RPA, which is at least 20-year-old technology. Of course, there was always early adopters, but that's real. And I think one thing that the HME industry is woefully missing is I call the pizza tracker.
Sure.
So the pizza tracker, and I talked about this at the session, Domino's Pizza released the pizza tracker in 2008, transformed the home delivery of food model completely, right? Every single other pizza place has the exact same technology now. And then you have things like Uber Eats, DoorDash, list goes on and on. They all have that same concept. Where's my order? Who's bringing it to me? When are they going to be here? However, the HME industry is still very much like the appliance delivery industry, right? Where like I just bought a washer from Lowe's and it's going to be here on Tuesday between noon and 5. That's old school, right? People don't want that kind of window. They want to know who's coming to my house. When are they coming to my house? Because there's a lot of anxiety around letting an outsider into my house. I love it on my Uber Eats that I can see where my driver is and I can be at the door when he gets there prepared. So our industry is woefully missing this. And I said, I don't I don't want to call you guys Domino's Pizza. And everybody laughed. I said, but this is really something we've got to apply some pressure to our software vendors on, because we're getting way behind. It used to be almost nobody came to your house, right? I mean, the pizza places came to your house, and then the washer delivery guys and the appliance and furniture delivery guys would come to your house. But that it was pretty rare in the HME company. So for them to be in a situation where, okay, you got to pick up the phone and call and you get these delivery windows, well, that was acceptable, but that is no longer acceptable. The table stakes have changed. People who are going into other people's homes, and that technology needs to rise to the occasion. I'm in so now 2008, right, is when the Domino's Pizza Tracker came out. So 2018 was 10 years later, which is probably around the time that we all started getting apps from our hospitals and our physician groups. That time frame, right, 2015 to 2018. Every one of my hospitals, I've got an app. We're here in the Atrium Health System area here in Novant. I've got my app. I can schedule a visit. I can pay my bill, right? So
Sure.
2028 is coming, right? We got 5 years to get our stuff together, and we've got to get this technology in place. So that was my first session, was all about automation, how we leverage that. And we talked about a lot of areas where that can be done. And then the second thing that we talked about, I had a second session, which was very well attended on Wednesday, about mastering your resupply program. I did have about 100 people come into that session. We're really happy about that. I was supposed to speak with Rhonda Burmester from VGM. Unfortunately, due to some health issues, she wasn't able to come to Medtrade, but Kelly Grahovic with Van Halen Group stepped up. She did an amazing job. So big shout out to Kelly, big shout out to the Van Halen Group. We love those guys. And we had a session on mastering your resupply program, which went really well. Talked about get those blinders off, because everybody is focused on PAP resupply, which is certainly a good business model. But in HME, there's about a dozen more product lines that are also great for resupply. That's where your money is, that consistent resupply model. So we had a great attendance there, and I think it was a really well received.
Well, that's wonderful. And as we're wrapping up here, to either of you, let's start with you, BJ. What advice would you have to somebody who's considering going to Medtrade or is going to attend next year for the first time? What would you suggest for them that they do before they head out?
You know, the biggest thing is just plan out your schedule, because you could get caught up bumping into different colleagues or different people. Plan out your schedule, right? Plan out the education sessions that you want to go to, plan out the people you want to see, and give the showroom floor. There's a lot of vendors out there, so walk around and make sure you give everyone some time and see what best fits you, because there are some vendors out there, people that come see Prochant, never thought of outsourcing in the past, wasn't on their radar, and all of a sudden you actually see what we do with staffing help and bringing our technology to help out, and really opens up their eyes to different options that they may have that they didn't think of in the past. So I always say, you know what, give everyone a shot and just listen to what they have to say. You never know what may be a fit.
Sure. And Joey, I'm guessing that one of your bits of advice would be attend to the meeting sessions and the special talking events. But besides that, what would your advice be to somebody who's contemplating going to Medtrade for the first time?
I say one thing, it's going to be in Dallas for the next couple of years, right? So the hotel attached to the conference center is the Omni, and that's definitely where all the action is. So if possible, get that reservation early, stay at the Omni, because you'll be right there where everybody else is. You'll be quick walk down to the exhibits. So that would be maybe advice number one. Number two would be, really try to plan out that trip and look through the sessions. Like you said, hit the ones that you want to hit. They have multiple concurrent tracks happening at a time, and they're organized into things like billing and reimbursement versus the executive track versus, operational track. So you can bring some of your key people, and that would be, I guess, another piece of advice. I mean, it's great for the executives to go, but bring that next level down if you can, line managers, because they're going to have a really incredible experience themselves by being able to interact with other people with a similar job role, as well as interact with the vendors on the expo floor, sort of face to face. So those would be my advice.
Good advice all around. Well, gentlemen, thank you so much for your time and for sharing your experience with us about Medtrade 2023. And I'm sure we're already getting started on thinking about Medtrade 2024. So again, thank you so much for joining us. You can find BJ and Joey on LinkedIn. You can also find ways to contact them on our website, Prochant.com. Thanks to everybody who listens, subscribes, likes the videos on YouTube, rates us 5 stars on Apple Podcasts. That really helps spread the word about the show and get us ranking higher in the Apple Podcast search, which raises our appearance on all the other searches. So if you get a chance, that would really help us out. And again, thank you so much for listening. If you got any questions, you can check us out at Prochant.com and fill out the Speak to an Expert form, and we will be happy to answer any questions you have about revenue cycle management for your business. And as always, thanks for joining us. We'll see you in the next episode. Take care.
Thanks for listening to the Modern Healthcare Back Office, a presentation of Prochant, a wholly owned revenue cycle management service dedicated to serving HME, pharmacy, infusion, and other healthcare providers. Learn more about us at Prochant.com.